so much for coming tonight. My name is Alicia. I'm the manager of Talking Leaves Books, Buffalo's oldest independent bookstore. First of all, we want to thank Hall Walls for partnering with us to continue to bring live literary events to Buffalo. They are truly a mainstay in the Buffalo art scene. We are deeply appreciative of our partnership with Hall Walls. So we thank them for giving us this wonderful space tonight. Tonight, we are welcoming Steve Majors. He is the author of High Yella, the forthcoming graphic novel Light Bright, and the book of essays he'll be discussing and reading from tonight, Man-Made. His writing explores issues of race, class, and identity, and his essays have been published in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, and many others. He's joined in conversation by James Whorton Jr., a professor of writing and literature at SUNY Brockport and author of the novels Approximately Heaven, Frankland, and Angela Sloan, all of which I will have for sale afterwards. So without further ado, please welcome, to begin the reading, Steve Majors.
Thank you. The nuns have announced that we have found a new PE teacher. We're too old, they tell us, for just walks around the block or visits to the playground with a stay-at-home mom who volunteers. Now we have a grown-up guy who will teach the boys how to play boy games while the nuns gather the girls to skip rope. As he marches us boys into the cavernous Catholic social hall next door, I'm excited. I cut the line so I can march right behind him and see Coach up close. His curly hair, shaggy mustache, and hairy legs sticking out from his shorts. But I remind myself to hold my arms at my side as the nuns tell me. Otherwise, those arms might reach up to feel the white cotton t-shirt he has tucked in so neatly, or the whistle around his neck. Making a good impression is important because the nuns tell me I am the best boy in my class. I need to show my new PE teacher I am special too. I want him to like me the best. Go stand on the line, Coach barks at us. Tweet. I run to get in place. As I look down the line, I see my classmate Raymond's sneakers are just a few steps forward off the line. Back up, I hiss. Tweet. Quiet, no talking. The coach tells us that the next time he blows his whistle, he will point to one of us and make us show him what we can do, like 10 jumping jacks, 5 sit-ups, or running in place for 30 seconds. Tweet. Quiet. Now let's get started. Coach whistles and points at a boy, one by one. I'm nervous as I wait for my turn. Suddenly, he looks me in the eyes. His lips pinch tight around the whistle he's been holding in his teeth. He points at me. Tweet. Fly, he yells. I take off across the floor of the makeshift gym. My short legs pump as fast as they can. My arms extend wide and then flap. I run in circles, then in figure eights. I go faster and faster. Tweet, 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 tweet. I look up. Coach is waving me back into line. The whistle drops from his lips, and he has a huge grin on his face. Coach has noticed me, I think. I figure I am now his best boy. But as I slow down into a jog and come in for a landing back into my spot in line, I hear Coach cough back a laugh. The kids are laughing too. Some are doubled over. Coach takes a deep breath and wipes his eyes. Get back into line. And Majors? Yes, Coach? You're fly. I do not understand. There has been no dad, no man to explain what I have done wrong, what I don't know about being a boy. He points at my crotch. Your zipper. I tug the zipper up on my denim shorts and hang my head. All the boys are laughing. Coach joins in. For the first time in my life, I realize I will be different from other boys who know the secret male codes and rituals passed on from their dads. No one has taught me what a fly is. No one will teach me how to hawk spit and not dribble. shake my penis after peeing, or blow my nose by closing one nostril with a finger and snorting. And men like Coach will not think to teach me either. Nor will they let me feel the stubble on their faces or crawl over their bodies. I am not their best boy.
Wow, thanks, Steve. That's I'm glad you read that part. There's so much going on there, and so it just reminds me that the book has many projects going on, and one of them is looking for models. But another part of it is figuring out how to be a boy without having a father's example. And so much of it, so much of the book is, I think, about figuring out how to be gay. But I wondered if you ever thought about, so I'm straight. I wonder if you ever thought, as you're writing about this book, about how this is could it be sort of a universal book? Because, I mean, it's hard for me to ask you this because you don't have the experience, I guess, of growing up as a straight boy. But I'm imagining this scene that you just read from the perspective of a kid who's straight and also trying to figure out how to perform in a gender role correctly. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm on the wrong track with that, though.
No, I think you are. I think I write from my perspective as, my experience as someone who grew up gay without a dad. But I think there's a universal experience for any boy without a dad. And so I want this book to be universal. I want it to be approachable, for any sort of audience. And I think the themes in it around finding your identity as a boy, as a young man in this world, understanding and trying to interpret what's meant by masculinity, finding role models as a father, and then determining what it means to be a father yourself, I think apply to all men today, to many men today, and not just those who are gay, no matter what their sexual identity or orientation is.
Yeah. I'm gonna. This is so interesting to me, and I'm probably gonna ask a bunch of clumsy questions, getting closer as I'm thinking about this and listening to you. But I loved your first book, High Yella, and one of the conclusions that are sort of thing I got from that book was, okay, race is a fiction. It's a made-up thing, but we've convinced ourselves in this country so thoroughly that it's real that now every one of us has to deal with it. So, and that's something you write about in the first book. And it's super complicated. Sexuality is a little different because you are gay, right? It's not a made-up convention. So even though it may be the case that all boys have to figure out, okay, gender is a thing and there's a story that people are telling, I've got to play the boy games while the girls play the girl games. At some point, I don't know, puberty happens, it's before puberty, but at some point there's something coming from inside the person saying, oh, she's hot, or oh, he's hot. So that's different from...
It is, and so I think that, I love the comparison that you make from sort of the first book. Race is a social construct. Sexual identity and orientation is a reality. But I think that there's a continuum there. I'm going to just speak about the gender of sort of male gender, different expressions of it.
Yeah.
And so as I think about just my own experience, I was pointed towards one specific expression of what it meant to be a boy or male or a man, and trying to reconcile that with, well, gee, this is what the world is telling me I need to be, but I'm gay and I don't fit into that construct, but I'm still a boy and I'm still a man and I'm still looking for a dad and I'm still looking to be a father. And I also think about, I told this anecdote recently. as a young boy, I was actually a very effeminate young boy. And I think about the fact that my brothers at the time, like, they weren't abusive, but they probably beat it out of me. You know, you don't cry, you get a punch, toughen up, be a man. And the world around me also scared certain mannerisms out of me, and affectations, and the way that I speak. And so, even to be, I think about the person I am today as compared to the person I could have been. I would have been a radically different person, I think, if the world was willing to just accept that there are different expressions of maleness, of masculinity, and let alone different identities and orientations.
Right. And I'm not trying, what I'm about to say, I don't mean to say we're all the same, because I know we're not all the same. But I think what you just said could be said about so many straight guys too, you know. That I was very early on taught not to do a certain thing with my wrist. Because back in the 70s when I was a kid, that was like, oh, like the John Ritter on Three's Company image of what a gay, he wasn't actually gay, but he was in that series, you remember. But yeah, it's just a whole range of gestures that are just part of what you can do with your body that I was coached, don't do that.
Yeah. And can I jump in here? Yeah. I mean, even the way that we are sitting right now, when I grew up, I was told you could never cross your legs at the knee. And so I find now that even that convention has gone. So I see many men crossing their legs at the knee, but you know, when I was growing up, that was just something that you could not do.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I wonder how much of that is because we're a similar age, and I don't know if boys probably not sit this way.
I see more of them. I definitely do, and I watch. I think we have a generation of boys whose parents are more willing to let them, let alone what their sexual orientation is. You know, I see little boys running around with nail polish, you know, or, you know, parents allowing their kids to just have different expressions in how they dress. Certainly there's a whole generation, I'd say, of Gen Z and millennial young men who wear makeup, and it's not, and who are straight, and it is not a thing. Yeah. And so that's also, I think, the sort of the subtext of here is not just how I have learned, you know, sort of my definition of manhood, but even sort of the definition of manhood in the world today has changed, and what it means to be gay has changed dramatically in just, you know, several decades.
Yeah, I wondered about that a lot as I was reading this, because so much of the drama of the book is like, this is Steve's, like, I've got to figure out a way to do this thing covertly. Or I've got to recognize signs that there are these signs that have to be invisible to straight people, but I can see them. So like the certain kind of way of dressing on the cover of an athletic magazine, you can read that, and you know what that's about. And I mean, how much of can you talk some more about how much of that exercise has shaped you? I mean, would you be a different kind of gay man now if you hadn't had to do all that decoding? And
I think so, absolutely. And so the sort of the requirements of you know what it took to survive, in an environment, in a society that taught you to be covert, but to learn how to use your quote-unquote gaydar to recognize other gay men in the world, to understand hidden coded clues in the media about, well, obviously this person, is gay or has, attraction to other men. And I would be a radically different person, I think, if that sort of pressure and stress was not imposed on me. And I think, again, for anyone who picks up the book, I don't want them to feel like it's just a book about being gay. I do think even men of a certain age, the pressures that they have felt to conform, right? Even straight men to a certain sort of rigid definition. There are many men, I think, even in later years who, are thinking like, well, I happen to not like sports, or I happen to not, to like this or not, or something else. And only later in life we're getting to sort of explore a different expression of their humanity, because they were told that there were certain expressions that were not available to them because they were too feminine or not masculine enough.
Yeah. That's a lot to think about. Another side of this that struck me is in the piece called He-Man, and the passage I marked is on 98. And what's going on is I think this is your first gay pride parade.
Yep.
Maybe, yeah. And you see a guy that you recognized from years ago, and this is middle of page 98. And what's happening is you're with these other men that you don't know well, and they're sort of doing this thing where they, oh, look at, he's fat, or that dress is stupid, and the way you put it is, they size everyone up, comparing bodies, faces, and outfits. It was what the gays do, engage in running monologues. I just found this kind of serving as our own judges in make-believe fashion, talent, beauty, and bodybuilding competitions. All the little gay boys who were bullied and teased grow up to do the same thing to one another. That's just heartbreaking.
It is, and I feel like it's, I see it still in the gay community. Perhaps it's not as pervasive as it once was. I think it is, and it's a result of, it's a defense mechanism. A way of shaming or casting a harsh light on others so it's not done in terms of you. I think it's also probably a function of, it's probably a bit of a power dynamic as well, right? Like, homophobic people judge us all the time, and this is our opportunity to judge, right? How do we create our own sort of pecking order in the ways that others have? And it's unfortunate, I think, for the community. I mean, I think as I end that passage, right, I say it's just a way of building up our fragile self-esteem at the expense of others. And I do believe that. I believe that people who bully others, who shame others, who, ridicule others, these are folks with really damaged self-esteems. And, I'm not a social scientist, but I've read enough and lived enough to know that many gay men, particularly of a certain generation, I'm going to talk about all gay men, but particularly of a certain generation, had fractured self-esteems.
Yeah. How much of the writing of the book, does this stuff, did you figure this out and then write the book? Or were you writing the book partly to figure these things out?
That's a great question. I think a little bit of both, but it came out of when I wrote Hyella, I felt like, there were parts of myself that I had pushed aside out of that book. So I didn't write about what it was like. I alluded to it, what it was like to be a gay man and try to find my way in the world. But that book was, as you said, the themes, they were complex, but it was about race and identity, primarily race. And I did not explore, sexual orientation. And I felt that was a part of my story that was missing. And when I thought about it, I thought, well, did I not write about it because I was ashamed and scared? And I think the answer was yes. So it came about because I felt like I was not being true to myself by leaving that part off the page. And I remember writing a couple of essays, and hopefully we can talk about the form for folks who are interested in understanding what the book is. But as I wrote a couple of essays, I saw some similar thematic similarities. And I found a series of essays that I had written, on some obscure blogs, and I realized there was a through line there, and that, the subtitle here, it's man-made, searching for dads, daddies, father figures, and fatherhood. And I realized I had been subtly writing about these things over and over and over again, just in different forms. And as I put them together, it was a way of me making meaning. And I think I've said this before. I believe that all writers, whether they're writing nonfiction or fiction, ultimately are writing to make sense of their own lives and to make sense of the world around them. Mm-hmm. And so I tell people I write primarily first for myself, to make meaning. Mm-hmm. And if I write something and it moves me, it makes me cry, and it feels somehow profound, something from outside of me that I've somehow channeled. Not that I'm brilliant, that came from somewhere I have no idea. I feel compelled to share it with the world and see if others feel the same way.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk some about the form. There's a bunch of short, punchy essays. I think they're all in present tense.
Yeah.
And one thing that results in is, when we're with you when you're 8 years old. I mean, I know you live to write the book, but there's this kind of we don't have the reassurance of knowing it's going to be okay, or knowing that one day you're going to be married with children. So that seemed like let me ask this question. Did you start out writing these all in present tense from the beginning, or at what point did you make that choice?
The first couple of chapters I wrote in past tense, and I realized it felt like another memoir. Now, look, from a marketing standpoint of view, this is billed as a memoir. I do like to believe that it is a collection of essays. Mm-hmm. Well, so you call it memoir and essays. So present tense was a way. I began sort of my writing career as an essayist, right? And oftentimes I would toggle between, I would often write in present tense in personal essays, of a current issue. So as I experimented with sort of the present tense, there was an immediacy that I felt was really powerful. Like I was struggling with these issues. I was trying to reconcile myself. I was trying to get these answers. So it gave a better sense of urgency. Yeah. And each essay stands on its own, so that folks can read an essay and feel like this is self-contained and there's a lesson in here, and I don't have to move on to another section to get to get an answer or to get a resolution there. And then as I put them together, I realized I didn't want to do the sort of traditional, it's memoir is usually, future tense, crisis at the beginning, crisis of conscience, and then past tense, and then you write toward sort of the hopeful future. And I didn't want to do that as well. But in chronological order, I also realized I was reckoning in each of those essays with different phases of my life. So, if folks look at the book, there are, I can't remember how many, but there are 7 sections. And each section is a series of essays, and sort of begins with boyhood and moves on to brotherhood and bachelorhood, singlehood, adulthood, fatherhood, manhood. And so taken together, you can sort of see the arc of my life experience, but each essay I felt really important, should be able to stand on its own, and each section should stand on its own.
Yeah, it's interesting. In a way, it reminds me of a photo album, in that it's, here's a shot, and here's a shot, and there's not this business, which actually can get kind of dull sometimes, like the transitional, and then the next week this happened, or 4 years later,
and I again, and for me that felt traditional memoir, and so when I was shopping it around, I said it's a collection of essays. I'm like, no one buys collections of essays, you know? And so it's like, okay, is it a memoir, an essay? So like, it's a memoir. But I do want folks to know that, and I've gotten feedback from readers who appreciate that. The other thing, you know, Jim, I want to make clear about this book, I think folks should say, I said this to somebody, not every essay is for everyone, but the book itself is for anyone. And what I mean by that is, there are sections of this book, like particularly Bachelorhood, which really dive deep into sort of like my, you know, wild and crazy gay 20s. Mm-hmm. Now that may not appeal to every reader, right? But there are other sections on fatherhood, right? That I think, you know, we're going to resonate with all types of readers. And I do still think that from front to back, taken completely as a whole, it holds together, and I do think, you know, folks would find it an enjoyable read, whether or not like they can relate to any of my personal experiences.
Yeah, I wondered about that too. I teach at SUNY Brockport, and so we're just this past week I had a student. He's a bright guy. We read a book of poems by Ama Kojo. She's a black woman, and she talks a lot about being a woman and being black, and the Black American experience. And one of my students who's a bright guy, a white student, he said, I don't think the book was meant for me, but you're, and I just wanted to say, like, wow, you know, what's it like to be, say, a straight girl in America who, well, that's not the example. It's sort of like, if you're a black reader, and you read The Great Gatsby, are you meant to say, well, I'm not the demographic for this book, but I'm glad you said what you said. I kind of just want to throw out the whole idea of I'm going to go to the section of the bookstore that's my demographic and read about, you know, somebody who shares my sexual preferences and my cultural interests.
I heard a writer recently say that, you know, reading a book, particularly that is outside of your personal experience, is the greatest act of sort of, I think she described it as sort of civic empathy, you know, at a time in our country when people are so polarized and feel so differently. Just reading about someone with a different life experience or a different identity, that's how we gain collective understanding and I don't even want to use the word tolerance, just compassion and empathy for one another, so that even if we have different points of view, we can understand where people are coming from.
Yeah, yes. I also think that I'm not sure that we all understand our own identities as, I mean, like if you'd asked me 40 years ago to talk about gender, I would have said, you know, there's boys and girls. And if you'd asked me when I was a kid to talk about race, I would have said, well, there's like 4 of them. And but then, as I was getting at earlier, reading the front part of this book made me think again how much of my own, I'll just say this, like my own expression of gender, I know is stuff that was coached into me. And there were moments where it's, oh, that's puzzling. Like, why am I not supposed to sit that way? Or why am I supposed to follow a woman in through the doorway? Why can't I walk in?
Yeah.
You know, so I think I need to read. I need to sort of read outside my demographic and my.
Yeah. And I think again, you know, for I tell folks this is not a gay book. This is not the big gay book. But I do in that I don't want people to be put off by, you know, the description on the back or, you know, the subtitle or where it may live in a section of a bookstore. And something that you just said just, you know, gave me a particular insight. I do think, particularly, you know, at a time when I think there is a bit of a crisis in sort of, you know, among young men about like what they are trying to wrestle with, what it means to be a man in this country today. And I think by reading other men's experiences, they can see that there is wide room for interpretation of how they want to live their lives as men.
Yeah.
And when they see somebody who is gay challenge sort of stereotypes and norms and conventions, I hope that they would feel empowered to do the same in their own life and to say, no, I don't have to do this to be a man or be this way to be a man.
Yeah. It's a book I'd recommend to fathers, I think. Being a father, you have enormous ability to screw up and do things the wrong way as a father.
Yeah.
And that's something you work on in the book, is you being a father and being a good father, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but not reproducing some of the mistakes that you lived through.
Yeah, and I said this, recently when I was speaking in front of another group. I am a failed and flawed father, and own up to it. I never, this, we have you've heard the old, saw, like, I did the best that I could. I joke sometimes with my kid, it's like, I did the worst I could. Like, not intentionally, but I made many, many mistakes as a father. And I regret them all. And I want my kids to know that now. I don't want, to be defensive about it or to kind of begrudgingly apologize for it later in life. But I also want them to know, and this gets towards the title, man-made. I am not completed as a man, and nor am I finished as a father. I'm still becoming my kid's father. Every day, I struggle to do better and be better than what I've been before.
You're making me think of your father-in-law and the couple of sections at the very end where you talk about. I don't know if you want to talk about that. It's really, it's really. I'm looking at son-in-law on page 156.
Yeah, this was that section, I guess you could call it a triptych. There are three sequential essays about the decline of my father-in-law. I did not grow up with a dad. The man who lived in my household, who was physically, emotionally, and I believe sexually abusive to members of my family, was a sort of failed father figure. And there were other father figures in my life, but I was surprised and shocked how late in life, after I married my husband, that I met this man who became yet another model for me as a father. Mm-hmm. And I watched him in his declining years, and the lessons that he taught me about life, about the ability to self-examine, to try to do better, to use, he was a scientist, and I think he used sort of a data lens. He was constantly seeking, I wouldn't call it affirmation as he declined and got dementia, but he just wanted to know, was he a good father? And I think he was not looking for sort of a pat on the back or pride. He literally wanted to know. And in doing so, and asking those questions actively of me and of others, he was imparting life lessons as well. As his faculties diminished and he was not able to remember prior conversations, his brain would spark to life at moments. And you could feel him reaching out and saying to us, like, while I have this moment of self-awareness, I need to tell you these things. Mm. And he would repeat them again and again. So even he knew, he was self-critical himself, but he knew that there were some truths about fatherhood and about parenting that he felt he absolutely had to pass on while he could. And I still read those three sections, and I still cry sometimes reading them.
Yeah. We're here to talk about this book, but I got to mention, I've told you this before, a moment in a section that I love in High Yellow. The way I'll put it is, it's the best description of a bat mitzvah that I've ever read, and it was written by an American black man who's not even Jewish, unless you've become Jewish recently.
No,
yeah. But I love that scene, that story, because it's about wanting to be a good father. And I like what you said. I mean, I'm trying to think of how many perfect fathers do I know? But I know a lot of fathers who want to be better.
Yeah.
Which is,
it is.
Something.
And I think that's the other sort of, as I wrote this book, it was an acknowledgement that I'm not alone. There are many fathers out there who are afraid to admit that they're struggling as dads, that they don't have all the answers, that they've made terrible mistakes that they regret, and that they have done things that they wish they could take back. They're afraid to own up to it. They're afraid to admit that they don't live up to some idealized version of what it means to be a good dad. And I tell my own kids, even their expectations of me, I'm like, well, I'm not going to be that dad. That's not me. I tell them all, like, that ain't me. My kids sometimes, have this expectation, like, okay, you're the big protector and the nurturer, and I'm like, yeah, I'm all those things, but like, I'm not the dad you see on TikTok. I'm not girl dad. Yeah. I'm not girl dad. And even today, you see people creating these memes and these videos that are setting up these artificial ideal of what fatherhood is, girl dad. I'm like, nope, not me.
What is girl dad?
I mean, I take it to be, when I read these, girl dads are, a little befuddled, a little bemused. They don't know what's going on in the world around them. And yet, they are these warm, compassionate, giving, loving dads who are willing to give anything to their daughters, especially spoil them, give them anything that they want, put them on a pedestal. Yeah. And my own kids are like, well, you don't do that. And I'm like, I love you, and I'm trying to build the best life possible for you, and I'm trying to give you everything I possibly can, but I can't live up to that. I can't be TikTok girl dad. I'll do my best.
Yeah. It's another theme in the book, and I'm not going to be able to put my finger on the passage, but there's a passage. Another theme is the way that a family has to be invented, and you can't always just rely on whose DNA do I share. The passage I'm thinking of is when one of your daughters has got a homework assignment, fill in your family tree, and it's kind of impossible. It's a lot of gaps, and it's not only in that family tree. I mean, there's a problem in the book is who's my biological father, and you talk about getting a DNA test, and so it's another. I'm sort of going back to the point of your point. It's not a gay book, but not only a gay book. It's certainly a book about family and the problem of finding or inventing a family.
Yeah, and I think
creating a family.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as someone who is gay, is a gay dad, and has 2 children by adoption, and I do think I actually met an adoptive dad the other day who had read the book, and he said, he was talking about chapters that really spoke to him about the struggle as parents, let alone if we're dads or moms, when our families are not created in the same way through biology. And even when they are created through biology, there may be sort of social differences in, are they blended families? What do they look like? Are there differences in race and differences in faith? And so I'd say that is similar between the first book, Hayela, and this book, Man Made. There is also sort of a sub-theme as well about, this is also about what it means to sort of create family and your definitions of family as well.
Yeah. That makes me think in a way that this whole idea of we're family because we're blood related, might be kind of an excuse. Like, if that's all you've got going for you in your house, then I don't know, maybe you need to do a little more work.
Yeah. And I think that's true. I mean, I think all of us know, families that are related by blood, and you would say that is no kind of family, right?
Yeah.
That is not how we should be defining family.
Yeah. Let me ask you, this is a sideways jump, but I want to ask you another question about the form of the book, because your training is as a journalist. And something that struck me, not in every case, but in many of these, is you start out with kind of a general paragraph, like here's a problem, or here's something that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then you quickly zero in on really specific details. Is that I'm learning about a journalistic idea of a lead. Is that going on here?
Yeah, I think partly, and that may be subconsciously what's happening, but I also think it tends to be true of the personal essay form, right?
Okay.
Sort of stating the problem, like you pick up your newspaper, read your favorite blog, your favorite Substack,
Mm-hmm.
sort of a general sort of statement of problem,
Mm-hmm.
and then very quickly you get into sort of the details, you sort of unpack it, throughout the essay,
Yeah.
and then with examples and anecdotes, and then try to wrap it up. And most essays, as you know, I think, don't wrap up cleanly. Like there's sort of and I think also what I appreciate in writing in this form is, like, you can feel complete at the end of the chapter, but you can realize there's not necessarily resolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did notice that, and it worked that way for me, because there's sort of like, again, going to the photo album analogy, it's sort of like, here's a take, we haven't figured everything out, but here's a day,
Yeah.
here's what it was like at this moment.
Yes.
How long would it take you to write one of these?
Oh gosh, I think it depends. Because I'm a journalist, I think I tend to write very quickly and edit very quickly. Now that speaks nothing about the quality. I think I go through a lot of revisions. People, I have readers and editors who give me notes and things like that, but I can work very fast. I think that if I have an idea in my head, whether it's the lead or the close, an essay like this, maybe an hour, maybe 45 minutes.
Okay.
And as you see it, I mean, there's some that are very short. I mean, it's a page and a half,
Mm-hmm.
these little vignettes.
Mhm.
And so they're also very quick reads as well.
Yeah. Are you still writing in essays in this form?
Yes and no. I mean, I've started to kind of move, like I'm actually working on a full-length play at the moment that actually explores similar issues and similar characters. So that's interesting to sort of jump to that genre. I'm working on a novel at the same time that's completely different.
Yeah.
Finally, I'm like, okay, I think I've written about myself enough.
I'm counting genres, that's 5 now, 5 separate, because Hayel is more of a straight memoir,
Yeah.
formally. This is this,
Mhm.
you're writing a play,
Yeah.
you're writing a novel,
And there's a graphic novel as
Alicia
well.
mentioned the graphic novel called Light Bright.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I may have heard about this, but will you tell about
Yeah,
that?
sure. It started as a YA novel, and it's, again, I pull from my experience. It's about a mixed race,
Yeah.
black young boy who, it's sort of the fish out of water, who grows up in an interracial family, but goes to spend the summer with his black grandmother in Western New York for the summer, and how that boy comes to understand what it means to be black. And what I appreciated about it in that form is that it gave me a lot of freedom to fictionalize things and to really get at the truth of the issue, but to fictionalize it in a way that I didn't feel compelled to, like, well, gee, that didn't happen to me. I didn't have to write yet another memoir.
Mhm.
And I also wanted it to appeal to a younger audience.
Mhm.
So I wrote it as a YA novel. I was not able to sell it then, and I tend to be an impatient writer. I'm like, I write something, I'm like, I want to see it in the world because it's speaking to me now. So I was able to sell the story as a graphic novel. And I will tell you, I've seen the illustrations, I've seen the work of the scripter. It's amazing, amazing. And all I provided was the story. And so I'm just super excited about that. That's out in 2026.
Did you write every word that's in the...
Yeah. So the adapter, because graphic novels have a certain form, and I'm like, I know what I can do, I know what I cannot do. I cannot adapt this. So they brought on somebody who's familiar with the graphic novel form and literally took my story. All the words are the same, all the characters the same, the plot's the same.
Yeah.
He just adapted sort of the narration accordingly, for the graphic novel form.
That sounds really fun.
Yeah, it's been great.
Is it like a rule that you have now that you're not going to write 2 books in the same genre?
Well, I don't want to sort of be a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
And, so people ask me, why I move on to another project or something that excites me. It's because I would drive myself nuts if I had a project that I was trying to get out in the world, and I would obsess over it.
Yeah.
I would obsess over it. And so in my heart, I'm a marketer. I'm like, why can't it be sold? Why can't it be sold? So while I let others obsess over it, like publication, etc., I will move on to a completely new project just to kind of begin to focus on something else. And, I do like that, I wish there was a literary equivalent of an EGOT, you know what I mean, for different genres. None of my books are award-winning, but yeah, I would like, that is appealing to me, to someone would be able to say, I've written in every genre I've published. I don't know if, poetry, I don't know, but somebody's turned me on to this idea, like, very short form, don't get so tied up into the form of poetry. There are some structural things, but there's, focus on the writing and the feeling that you want people to have. The structure, you will find the structure. I always believe that the structure follows the content.
Yeah.
Like, even the full-length play, I was like, no, that's not a book. I knew the story that I wanted to write, and it felt to me, I was like, oh, this could come alive on the stage.
Yeah.
And that's how I write, I think.
Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking about things that I want to be sure to touch on, and I don't know if a big thing about this book, a big source of pleasure in the book to me, comes down to really specific physical details. And some of them hit me because they're so vividly rendered. I'll mention one that has to do with digging through a gym bag.
Mm-hmm.
And our character pulls out like, oh, it's a mask like Marcus Welby wears. And then it's a jockstrap.
Yeah.
But
and as a kid, I didn't know what it was.
Well,
I was like, what is this?
Yeah, I guess one learns about that when you join the football team, or
or when you have a dad.
When you have a dad.
Yeah.
But in another one, another category of details are things that I just immediately recognized because they were part of my world when I was a kid, like the way men looked in the Sears catalog in the 1970s. A very specific kind of dress and a kind of pose that you... the book is full of moments like that where, okay, there's an idea, but now here's like thing, a certain kind of haircut, a certain kind of shirt.
Well, I believe, I think even straight men and straight women, I mean, you fall in love with your first ideal partner or romantic partner or your sexual attraction sometimes comes from what the culture shows you at a defining moment in your life. And now I think your tastes can change over time, but that is seared in your brain, right? And for a generation of boys, right? If it was the Sears catalog, like if you were straight, it was the women in the Sears catalog in the underwear section. Yeah. If you were gay, like it was the guys, right? And so that that thing is a defining moment for you when you're like, oh, that's what I'm attracted to.
Well, we didn't have the internet then.
Yeah.
We had like 4 TV channels,
Yep.
counting PBS, so.
Yeah, and the television and the people on television, that's where you learned, who you were attracted to. And so, younger folks today, have social media, have the internet, they have a cornucopia of different options of what they are attracted to. But I still do think that all people do, their first attraction, they remember what it was too. It was like, oh, it was that type. And they can point to it. It was like a movie, someone in a video game, right? Someone in a comic, someone in a graphic novel, someone on a reality TV show if it were today. And for us, for men of a certain age, it was the people on TV and the people in catalogs. Those were the people.
Yeah. And it's funny how some of that pleasure of discovering that first attractions, what part of that is just knowing that you're not supposed to be attracted to, like, oh, she's cute, she's a girl in a catalog. I'm not really supposed to be thinking about her because she's trying to sell a sweater right now, but
Yep.
Would you like to read another section of the book?
I would, and I think as we, I get the sense we're probably coming to the end. This last section, I don't think it's a spoiler alert, but I do think, that if people want to know what it's about, this penultimate paragraph towards the end, once it actually ends, the ultimate paragraph, really kind of gets at why I wrote this book or what I needed to understand as a result of it. I come to realize that I am no man's son, nor is any one person responsible for creating the man I am today. Instead, I am the imprint of the collective love of the men in my life, their affection and sometimes indifference toward me. I am a reflection of some of their hopes, as well as the dreams I held for them, but they could never achieve. I am the product of their failures, their disappointments, and their mistakes. I am the legacy of the cultural archetypes they fit into and the societal stereotypes they defy. I am what the world says a man should be and what my family expects one to be. To become all of these things, I forge together the disparate parts of manhood that feel at home in me, abandon those that have failed me, and nurture the few elements that I might grow into, so that ultimately I can one day say, I am my own man, a conception of my own self, and all that I have come to imagine, right or wrong, a son, husband, father, and a man to be.
Thanks, Steve. I love the book and spent good talking to you. And thanks, Alicia.
Thank you.